Now Cleric is one of my personal favourite classes in all of D&D and Baldur's Gate 3, but one of the lesser used, in my opinion, domains for Cleric is the Nature Domain. So, we're going to show it off. This is my Pure Domain Nature Cleric, levels 1 to 12, with a combat tutorial and some items, so let's get it going. We start with our Cleric, obviously, and for our cantrips there are a few options, but these would be my choices. Guidance, because I think this is one of the best spells to have from the start of the game all the way until the end. It's amazing, you can use it during dialogue, all sorts, and it's just one of the best spells in the game. Sacred Flame, 1d8 radiant damage. For me personally, this never hits, but I know it's a really good spell, and for everyone else I've seen play it, it hits all the time. For some reason, my luck when it comes to this one spell is incredibly poor. And then we'll also do Produce Flame. So Flame in your hand sheds a light in a 9 meter radius and deals 1 to 8 fire damage when thrown. And of course, the Nature Domain. So, the Acquit of Nature. You learn a Druid cantrip and have proficient in animal handling, nature, or survival. We have access to heavy armor, so that makes this really good because you can tank yourself up from the start. And we get a bunch of stuff to choose from. So, our first point of call here is either Thorn Whip to pull people towards you, or Poison Spray. I will personally take Poison Spray because I don't want to pull enemies towards us if we're concentrating, because then at the early stages of the game we have more chance of losing concentration. For a deity, you can pick whoever you want. Let us go with... let's do Talos, because why not? When it comes to your stat array, I would have something personally like this. 12 Strength, 14 Dexterity, 14 Constitution, 10 Intelligence, 16 Wisdom, and 10 Charisma. Now this being the start of the game, this is how I do this. If you are in Act 3 and you're following my guide to a T, including the items, then you're going to want to have your stats look like this. Something that looks like this, where Dex and Wisdom are your two highest. The reason being is that our items, we're using the Gauntlets of Hill Giant Strength, which will boost our Strength to 23, and we're using the Amulet of Greater Health, which boosts our Constitution to 23. So bear in mind, if you are going to this build, regardless of which stat array you start with, if you're respeccing towards the end of the game, or starting from the start with this, you're probably going to want to use a dexterity based weapon to begin with, just because that should be your highest physical weapon stat. For your proficiencies, take whatever you like, and we move on to level 2. Now, we get our Charm Divinity charges, and things like Turn Undead, as well as Charm Animals and Plants. Now when it comes to your prepared spells, I would have Guiding Bolt, because this is one of the best spells in my opinion, and whoever attacks the enemy next has advantage on their attack. Inflict Wounds, because you can upcast this and the damage is insane. You can one-shot some enemies with an amazing Inflict Wounds roll. Healing Word, because we are still a Cleric. Shield of Faith, protect a creature from attacks, increases armor class by 2. So this is a bonus action spell. So not only can you protect your allies, but then you can use your actual action to smack with a weapon, or cast Guiding Bolt, inflict wounds, that type of thing. And then finally, Bane. Up to 3 creatures receive a minus 1d4 penalty to attack rolls and saving throws. Again, another amazing spell. Now, Cleric level 3, we get a bit of a spike in power, in my opinion, in the early levels, depending on what spells you pick. So, for me personally, the 2 spells to start with at this point are both Hold Person, and Spiritual Weapon. So, I remove Bane, and put Hold Monster's the higher form one, and Spiritual Weapon. Spiritual Weapon again is a bonus action, and it gives you a summon on the battlefield. And honestly, this is amazing. In the higher stage of the game, it won't do as much damage as, say, an actual warrior or rogue, ranger, whatever. But it is an extra body on the battlefield, it will chip away enemies, and it's just a really handy spell to have. And of course, Hold Person is one of my favourite spells as well. If you can land this, and with our high wisdom in the early stage of the game, you have a very good chance of landing this. Any hits that are melee hits on the enemy that is held are automatic critical hits. So you can land this and you can dwindle enemies down ASAP, just by having one concentration spell. Okay, Cleric level 4, this gives us access to another cantrip, so let's take Light, and we get a feat or ASI. We're going to take the ability score improvement, and we're going to bump our wisdom up to 18. Now, when it comes to a spell here, there are 2 options in my opinion. Either Aid, so 5 healing, and you increase the hit point maximum by 5 for all your allies until long rest, or Prayer of Healing. It's honestly kind of depends on what you want. One will buff your maximum health points by 5, and then one will give you a greater healing pool. I think if you're going to go down this route, with the amount of potions you can get in the game and craft, I think Aid is just a little bit better. You could also theoretically take protection from poison, but I feel like with the amount of classes that get some form of poison protection or the other spells you can have, I think Aid is just a tiny bit better. Okay, Cleric level 5, we now have level 3 spell slots. We can also destroy undead. So whenever we turn undead, they also take 4 to 24 radiant damage. And when it comes to your spells at this point, we are going to take Glyph of Warding, again one of my favourite spells in the game, because you throw a glyph on the ground of a damage you choose, so fire, cold, thunderous, which will throw enemies back, that sort of thing. And then once an enemy runs onto it and triggers it, it will explode. But, in my opinion, the best way to use this is actually on your turn, place it on top of an already set of stationary enemies, and then when you end your turn, because the game thinks that the enemies are already within the glyph, it will explode and cause damage to all of them. So in a way, it's kind of like a 3rd level nuke if you use it right. And to pair that off, we're going to use Spirit Guardians because this is an amazing spell. This is so good, for, especially if you're going to be in the front line tanking. This is a great way of having concentration. Enemies that run towards you are just going to take damage. And again, this can be upcasted as well to do more damage. Okay, Cleric level 6 gives us access to Divinity Charges, so we get 1 extra one of those, and Dampen Elements. When you or an ally get hit with acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, you can use reaction to half the attack's damage. And this can be amazing because there are some high level damage dealing lightning spells, fire spells, all sorts that will really hurt a party that you can negate with this ability. And to go alongside this, we're going to take Mass Healing Word, because again, we are still a cleric, and one of our jobs, in my opinion, is to heal. Okay, Cleric level 7, now we have access to level 4 spell slots, and most of them are honestly pretty good. In my opinion, 2 spells are worth taking here. That would be Death Ward, so protect a creature from death. The next time damage will reduce it to 0 hit points, it remains conscious with 1 hit point. If you know an ally is about to get walloped and be killed, this is a great way to protect them. Or Garden of Faith. This is kind of like a summon, I guess. Not quite though. But essentially you summon this, and it stands there, and if an enemy is within it, the Guardian will attack it. If an enemy is within the radius and attacks someone else, the Guardian will attack it. The only problem is, every time the Guardian hits an enemy, say the Guardian hits it for 20 hit points, the Guardian then loses 20 hit points. So while this can be a big damage dealer, it can also disappear very quick. But the trade-off is you do a lot of damage. I would take Garden of Faith. Okay, Cleric level 8, we have another feat available, and Divine Strike Elemental Fury. Once per turn, deal 1 to 8 cold, fire or lightning damage, in addition to your weapon's normal damage when you make a melee attack. And an extra 1d8 of damage is never something to turn away at. If you're taking this build from the beginning, at this point you probably want to take a Warcaster to get Constitution saving throw proficiency. Because we are doing this from a respec, and we're going to assume you're using the items I'm using, we're going to take the ASI ability and skill improvement, and once again buff our wisdom to 20. And at this point, you're going to take whichever spell you didn't take to begin with, in this case, Death Ward. Okay, Cleric level 9, we have access to a level 5 spell slot. We have 48 health, and a bunch of new spells to use. And this is where we start bringing out the big attacks, and this time, we're going to take Flame Strike. Now, it is half fire and half radiant damage, which in itself is amazing, and it's up to 60 damage. Nothing to turn away at. Flame Strike is the spell here. Cleric level 10, we have unlocked Divine Intervention. Now, please note, these are very powerful. You only get 1 though, and it never comes back. This is a once a playthrough ability, and you can do a healing one, you can do a damage dealing one, all sorts. This is very much like a Hail Mary or Clutch moment type ability. Before anything else though, we get a cantrip, so let's take Resistance. And it is time to take another spell, and in my opinion, Revivify can be really good, it kind of depends. If you've got lots of scrolls, I probably wouldn't worry about it. My opinion would be Mass Cure Wounds and double down on us being a cleric and buffing and controlling the battlefield. Okay, cleric level 11, and it is time for us to take Planar Ally. You can summon this as soon as you leave camp, and he will last until they die. And some of them are really powerful. The Deva is my personal favourite, and that has things like a Divine Smite and all sorts. And finally, Cleric level 12, we have access to another feat. And for this one, I would take Tough. Now you could take Savage Attacker. I don't think Savage Attacker is really worth it, because we only get one attack. Tough it is. And we'll mostly be using our attacks for probably spells anyway, so I think increasing our hit point maximum is the best. A honourable mention, you could also do Savage Attacker, like I said, you could do Alert, but let's get the health increase. And for a spell, we are going to take Hero's Feast, because this is an amazing ritual spell you can do outside of combat, and it lasts until another long rest. Okay, so that was our level 1 to 12 build done. Now, it is time for us to go over some equipment. There's only a few options here that I've got. For a helmet, I'm kind of leaving it up to you. I personally think the helmet Baldur is the best. I don't know where it's gone out in my inventory, so I can't really show it off, but it essentially just gives you a +2 to your AC, I believe, which would mean our AC would be 26, not 24. And with such a high AC, you already know trying to break concentration on spells is going to be incredibly hard. But let's go over what we have. The Flesh Melter Cloak. Because we are going to be a bit of a melee type character as well, anyone that hits us with a melee attack will take 1 to 4 acid damage, so it's just another nice way of chipping away at danger. The Disintegrating Nightwalkers. So this ensures we can't be entangled, ensnared, can't step on grease or ice, and that is one of the worst ways to lose concentration on a spell, I'll tell you, by falling over. It's so embarrassing and annoying. It also gives us Misty Step, which helps us get into where we need to be, get out of danger if we're in a bit of a situation, that type of thing. The Hell Dusk Armor. Now, a solid 21 AC and the fly ability, but when you succeed a saving throw, and because our constitution and our wisdom, our strength, all that stuff is really high, there's a good chance we will save a lot of these. The caster receives burning for 3 turns, so essentially they take extra damage for failing to land their spell. We also are resistant to fire damage, which is really nice, cannot be burned, which is really nice, and take 3 less damage from all sources, again helping with our concentration saving throws. These pair really nicely with the Gauntlets of Hill Giant Strength, Strength Saving Throw +1, and our strength is set to 23, which means we can now use strength-based weapons, not just dex ones. The Ring of Regeneration, this gives you 1 to 4 hit points at the start of your combat. The Crypt Lord Ring, I really like this because it gives you a Create Undead spell, which means you can have another summon on the battlefield. The Amulet of Greater Health sets our Constitution to 23 and advantage on Constitution saving throws, which means we don't need to take a feat like a Warcaster or whatnot. And the Darkfire Shortbow for an opportunity to have the Haste spell. Now ideally this is probably better on another character. I usually have this bow on my Rogue, so he can haste himself and then pick people off. But if you want that on your Cleric, this is your option. For a shield, in my personal opinion, Viconia's Walking Fortress is the only good option. I say the only good option, it's the best option. There's a lot of good options, but I think this one's the best. And when it comes to melee weapons, the Blood of Lathander. Now, once per long rest, when your hit points are reduced to 0, you regain 2 to 12 hit points, and allies regain 1 to 6. It also gives us a Blinding Light, which helps against like undead and things like that, and it gives us access to Sunbeam. And you can get this pretty early into the game. Another option, which I think worked really well, is the Orphic Hammer. Now, you do have to make sure you are a race that can use martial weapons or warhammers, so please bear that in mind. But if you can, this is also a really good option. A little bit more damage, gives you advantage on all saving throws against spells, which is another nice way to do it. Pairs really nicely with the armor, which will set people alight. But the Blood of Lathander as a very early weapon I do think is phenomenal. So, let's go pick a fight, and I'll show you how good this cleric can be. Okay, so before you do anything, we've just left camp. Now, you do have to notice we only have 1 level 6 spell slot, so you do have lots of options you can do. You could do Create Undead. You could do Hero's Feast. In my opinion, it's nice to have the options, but the only, or the best one, I should say, not the only, but the best, is to get your summon. And in this case, I would get the Deva. And there you go. And now they will follow you around until they die. It doesn't matter how long, they'll follow you around. And what's really good is not only then they heal, you can heal them. And as you'll see, the Deva is on the same initiative as our Rogue, which is so good. Now the Deva, 85% chance to hit as a standard attack. But, as I said, it has a bunch of abilities, such as Revivify and Wrathful Smite. So let's land this. And there you go, we did 35 damage, and this target is now frightened. Okay, and now the good thing about Viconia's Walking Fortress is we have the reaction to do a Bulwark Rebuke. And there you go, we have knocked the enemy prone. And because that counts as a hit, now, because that is done, let's start casting some stuff. So let's get our next summon. We'll do our Great Axe. So that's our spiritual weapon. And we can come in here and we still have the ability to do all of this. So let's start with a hold person to show off how it is. We'll target this gentleman and we'll target the barbarian. Now unfortunately they saved, but this one hasn't. So I can show you what it means to have a held person. Every melee hit is a crit. So I'll show you as Gale for an example. And there you go, 13 damage. And obviously you're not going to be hitting people with Gale with his staff. You're going to be using your warriors, your fighters, that sort of thing. But it does also work with your summons, such as your spiritual weapon. And most importantly, it works with your Deva. Who can do much more damage than your spiritual weapon. Now, we're only going to show off a few abilities in this fight, so let's start working our way through them, and it will burn our spell slots, but this is only a demonstration. Spirit Guardians, as I said, you can upcast this and it gets progressively better. So at level 3, 3 to 24, or level 5, 5 to 40. We're going to start with level 3, just to save our higher spell slots. And it is concentration, don't forget that. But as you can see, we have now got the ability to start damaging people. And because of our AC, we can safely jump over here and do more damage to the gentleman here. And that's what's really good about Spirit Guardians, is it will damage people within it, it will damage people that you run towards, it will damage people that run towards you. And of course, thanks to our summons, we can wipe enemies out easier. And as you can see, the Deva still has all their health, and what's really, really handy is the Deva can fly. Which means we could fly ourselves into here. And we have one person on the battlefield who can really maneuver themselves around. And because they don't have spell slots, we can do Wrathful Smite every round when it hits. And you saw how much damage we just did with a standard attack. Alright, let's Misty Step into position, because Misty Step is amazing, and I want to show off some more spells. So as you can see, Spirit Guardians is really good. So we Misty Stepped in, they took damage from the Misty Step, and now if we wanted to, we could do something like Inflict Wounds. And now I'm going to show you exactly what I mean, because I said you can upcast this and do an insane amount of damage. Level 5 Inflict Wounds. 34 damage. Crazy. And we still maintain concentration on our Spirit Guardians. And once again, our Deva can fly and maneuver themselves around. And that is what makes the Deva so powerful. The Wrathful Smites every round, and the ability to fly from beam to beam or however, to really give you another battlefield utilitist who is just phenomenal at damaging and getting into places that other characters might struggle with. Now as you can see, we still have our Spirit Guardians, so if we move up a little bit more, it has now damaged this person. And as I said, when we set up our character, Glyph of Warding. Now ideally you want to place this, because it does again upcast to do high damage, in an area on top of everyone. But let's say we want to put this here, and there's 20 enemies here for example. Instead of having to wait for someone to run into it, it will trigger at the end of your turn if people were inside it. Now unfortunately their rogue did save, because rogues are the best, but that was just an example. And there you go, as a pure melee attack, you saw we did 14 damage, and we can do the Divine Strike. So let's do Lightning to add a little 1d8 on top, with another 6 damage. And of course we can keep Spirit Guardians going while doing some high level attacks. So let's use Sunbeam. and this will honestly melt the enemy. 16 damage. And that is the Nature Domain Cleric. A really good utilitist. Amazing at out of combat stuff like speak with animals, like animal friendship, that sort of thing. A great summoner with your Create Undead, your Deva, your spiritual weapon, your Guardian of Faith. And you've got loads of utility, like you have your bark skin, you've got your spike growth, you've got your plant growth. So if you want a druid cleric combo and you don't want a multi-class, the Nature Cleric is a good viable option. Now you probably will get more power spikes being a pure druid or a pure cleric of another form. Even a multi-class of them together might give you a bit of a power spike. But if you want a simple build because you're new to the game or something like that, you cannot go wrong with a Nature Cleric. I really hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please drop the episode a like. It helps me amazingly. If you're new and you're not subscribed, you'd like to, that would also be amazing. Hopefully, I'll see you guys in the next stream. Bye, guys.